My name is Clarice, and the day my sister told me I would die alone was the day something inside me cracked. Families can cut deeper than enemies, because their words are aimed at the places you trust them to protect. I had always been close to my younger sister, Amelia. She was radiant, loud, adored by everyone at every gathering. Where I was quiet, she was bold. Where I built with patience, she lived in glittering bursts. Our parents spoiled her endlessly, but I never resented her. At least, not until the day her cruelty showed itself. It happened one winter afternoon. We were in our parents' kitchen, preparing for a holiday dinner. Amelia leaned across the counter, her diamond ring sparkling under the light. She had just announced her engagement to her longtime boyfriend, a polished banker named Victor. Everyone clapped, everyone hugged her, and I smiled as best I could. Then she looked at me with a smirk I'll never forget. "Clarice," she said, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Maybe you should take notes. Otherwise you'll die alone. Unless someone is foolish enough to settle for plain and quiet." The room erupted with nervous laughter. My mother shook her head but did not stop her. My father chuckled awkwardly. I felt my cheeks burn, the sting of humiliation wrapping around me like a rope. What Amelia didn't know was that I was married already. Quietly, privately, without the spectacle she craved. My husband, Marcus, and I had eloped a year earlier. He claimed he hated attention, hated drama, and I respected that. I believed our love was stronger than rings of applause or glittering receptions. I believed I had chosen something real. But Amelia's words haunted me. That night, lying in bed, I told Marcus about the jab. I expected him to be angry for me, to tell me she was wrong, to hold me tighter. Instead, he just shrugged. "She's not entirely wrong," he muttered. "You are difficult to love sometimes." The words lodged in my throat. I rolled away from him, staring at the wall, unable to sleep. My heart pounded with doubt. Had he meant it? Was he serious? In the weeks that followed, small things began to gnaw at me. Marcus started staying late at work more often. He guarded his phone with a care he had never shown before. Sometimes he smelled faintly of perfume that wasn't mine. He told me I was imagining things when I asked, but my instincts screamed otherwise. Amelia's wedding date drew closer, and with it came endless comparisons. She sent me texts filled with photos of dresses, of cakes, of venues. "This is what a real marriage looks like," she teased. Each message was a fresh blade. I stayed silent, holding back my truth, that I was already a wife, already building a life. But silence became its own cage. One evening I overheard Marcus on the phone. His voice was low, intimate. He said a name I recognized. "Amelia." My blood turned to ice. At first I convinced myself I had misheard. My sister was planning a wedding. Why would she ever? But the seed of suspicion had been planted. And soon that seed grew roots. I remembered her smirk, her cruel words, her endless teasing. And suddenly it all felt less like carelessness and more like intention. That night, as Marcus slept beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my pulse racing. Could it be? Could the sister who mocked me and the husband who shrugged at my pain be entwined in betrayal I couldn't yet face? I rolled quietly from bed, crept into the living room, and opened Marcus's briefcase. Inside, between crumpled receipts and loose papers, I found it. A folded wedding invitation. Amelia's wedding invitation. But this one wasn't addressed to Clarice and Marcus. It was addressed only to Marcus. And at the bottom, in Amelia's handwriting, a note. "Can't wait to see you there. Ours will be the real beginning." My vision blurred. My breath came in sharp, ragged bursts. The two people I trusted most had carved me out of my own life. I sat there, the invitation shaking in my hand, and I whispered to myself, "They think I will die alone. But when I am finished, they will know what it feels like to be left with nothing." Because what began as a cruel joke from my sister would end at her wedding in silence so thick it would choke her. And Marcus would walk into that silence carrying the weight of the truth I had prepared for them both. The wedding invitation burned in my hand long after I slid it back into Marcus's briefcase. I could almost feel the ink pressing into my palm, the curve of Amelia's handwriting twisting like a knife. "Can't wait to see you there. Ours will be the real beginning." I wanted to believe it meant nothing. That it was a joke between siblings, that Amelia had been careless, that Marcus was simply helping her with wedding details. But the truth hissed at the edges of my thoughts. She hadn't written "you and Clarice." She had written only his name. That night, when Marcus came home, I studied him carefully. He kissed me on the cheek, casual, dismissive. He carried himself lightly, but there was an edge to him, like someone who was hiding a secret but too arrogant to imagine I'd discover it. Long day? I asked. Just drinks with a client. He loosened his tie. His eyes didn't meet mine. I wanted to throw the invitation at him, demand answers, scream. But I forced myself into silence. Silence would be my strength. The next morning, I found myself staring at Amelia's face on social media. She was radiant, grinning in her dress fittings, her captions dripping with self-satisfaction. The countdown begins, she had written. Hundreds of likes, dozens of comments. To the world, she was the perfect bride. To me, she was a thief stealing the one thing she had once mocked me for never having. That evening, I tested Marcus. Over breakfast, I casually mentioned, Amelia texted me about her wedding. She sounds so excited. His hand froze halfway to his coffee. A flicker passed across his face. So fast an ordinary woman might have missed it. But I caught it. He recovered, smiling smoothly. Your sister loves attention. Her wedding will probably last a week. The words seemed harmless, but his voice was too light, his smile too quick. He was hiding something. Later that week, I drove past the cafe Marcus often used for work meetings. I told myself it was just to calm my nerves, to prove my paranoia wrong. But through the window in the corner booth I saw them. Amelia, my sister, leaning in close, her manicured hand resting lightly on Marcus's wrist. And Marcus, smiling at her with softness he hadn't shown me in months. They weren't kissing. They didn't need to. Their bodies spoke what their lips hadn't yet dared. My hand shook as I lifted my phone, snapping a photo. The click of the camera was the loudest sound in the world. I didn't storm inside. I didn't confront them. Instead, I drove home in silence, my body trembling, my mind screaming. At home, when Marcus walked in with takeout and humming as though nothing had happened, I wanted to throw the photo in his face. Instead, I whispered, "How was Amelia?" For the briefest moment, his back stiffened. Then came the laugh, too loud, too quick. Always paranoid, aren't you? I smiled faintly, but inside a storm was building. Days passed. His phone never left his side. He changed the password, something he had never done before. Amelia grew distant with me, her calls rarer, her voice forced when we spoke. It was as though both of them were pulling away at the same time, weaving their own bond while mine unraveled. Then came the message that ripped the veil away. Marcus rushed outside to take a call, leaving his laptop open on the kitchen counter. I walked past and froze. His inbox glowed with unread messages, one subject line pulling me like a magnet, counting down the days. I clicked. The email was from Amelia. My heart stopped as I read. Soon it will be just us. No more hiding. No more pretending. At the wedding, everything begins. The words blurred. My throat constricted. My sister. My husband. Together. I printed the email with shaking hands and laid it next to the invitation and the cafe photo. 3 pieces of evidence. 3 blades in my back. That night, Marcus climbed into bed, humming again. I stared at the ceiling, my pulse a drumbeat in my ears. I thought of Amelia as children, her bright ribbons, her endless need to win, her laughter when she beat me in games. She had always needed to be first. And now she had stolen first place in the most brutal way possible. My sister had told me I would die alone. My husband had shrugged when she mocked me. Together, they were preparing to bury me in silence. But I was done with silence. I turned to look at Marcus sleeping peacefully beside me, his breath even, his face smug even in rest. And I whispered to myself, "You think I'm plain. You think I'm weak. But when your day comes, it won't be the beginning you planned. It will be the end." Because now I had proof, not suspicion, not jealousy, but proof, that Amelia and Marcus had betrayed me. And their wedding, the stage they built for triumph, would become the theater of their ruin. Once the email was printed and tucked beside the photo and the invitation, I realized I was no longer a wife waiting for love or a sister waiting for respect. I had become something else entirely, a collector of truths. The first page of my notebook was blank when I opened it that night. With a steady hand I wrote, "Evidence log." Then one by one I began. Cafe sighting, Amelia and Marcus, photo taken. Wedding invitation addressed only to Marcus with Amelia's note. Email, counting down the days, confirming secret plans. I stared at the words until they steadied me. Proof was no longer whispers in the dark. It was ink. It was undeniable. From that night on, I watched Marcus the way a hunter watches prey. His careless arrogance gave me more than he realized. He still hummed when he came home late, still scrolled his phone under the table, still brushed me off with lazy smiles. But I caught the details. A text alert flashing Amelia, before the screen dimmed. A receipt in his jacket pocket from a hotel bar 2 towns over. The faint shimmer of a gold necklace in his briefcase, one I had never received. Each item went into the notebook. Each photo went into a locked folder on my laptop. I even began recording his words. One evening while he thought I was in the other room, he muttered into the phone. "She doesn't suspect a thing. By the wedding it'll be done." I pressed record from the doorway, my heart pounding, my breath silent. Later, when I played it back, the casual cruelty in his voice hardened me like stone. I also began watching Amelia. She was less careful than Marcus. On social media, she posted endless photos, her manicured hand holding champagne glasses, the hem of a suit I knew wasn't Victor's, captions dripping with secret meaning. "The best things are worth waiting for. Can't believe how close we are." I screenshotted every single one. But I needed more than fragments. I needed witnesses. I visited the cafe one afternoon and struck up a conversation with the waitress. Casually, I asked if she'd seen my husband there often. She smiled politely. "Oh yes. He comes in with a pretty brunette sometimes. They're regulars." Her words were casual, but to me they were a dagger wrapped in ribbon. I noted the date, the name of the cafe, and her description. One more thread woven into the net. The hardest part was keeping still when Amelia called. Her voice was bright, fake, almost taunting. "Clarice, you'll come to the wedding, right? It'll be the happiest day of my life." I forced a smile she couldn't see and said, "Of course." But in my notebook I wrote, "Her happiest day will be her quietest when I'm through." Nights stretched into weeks and my evidence grew. I gathered hotel receipts, credit card statements Marcus left on the counter, perfume traces on his collars. I asked discreet questions of neighbors who noticed Amelia's car parked near my home when I wasn't there. Every answer was another nail in the coffin of their deception. And yet, the closer the wedding loomed, the more dangerous it became. Marcus was more guarded. He set stronger passwords, locked his laptop, and grew sharper when I asked innocent questions. But arrogance still betrayed him. One night, half asleep, he left his phone unlocked. My hands trembled as I scrolled. There were hundreds of messages. Amelia's words blazed across the screen. "Soon everyone will see. Soon she'll be out of the way." I copied them all. By now my evidence filled a thick folder. Every lie Marcus told. Every slip Amelia made. Every careless trace they left behind. But evidence alone wasn't enough. I needed strategy. I needed timing. If I confronted them in private, they would twist the story, call me bitter, call me jealous. If I spoke too soon, they'd bury the proof, make me look like a villain. So I began imagining the only stage large enough to hold the truth. Amelia's wedding. The altar where she would stand glowing, expecting applause. The aisle where Marcus would arrive, smug and certain. That would be my stage. The thought gave me strength. Each night as I looked at the folder on my desk, I whispered, "You gave me silence, Amelia. You gave me humiliation, Marcus. But soon I'll give you something in return. And it will echo louder than your laughter ever did." Because the evidence was ready, the stage was chosen, and the clock was ticking. And when the wedding day arrived, it wouldn't be a celebration. It would be the collapse of everything they thought untouchable. Carrying the truth alone was like carrying a stone in my chest. Heavy. Crushing. I could feel it pressing deeper each day as the wedding drew closer. The folder of evidence sat on my desk, thick and undeniable. But what good was truth if I had no one to hold it with me? So I called the one person I trusted more than anyone outside of family, my oldest friend Lydia. We had grown up together, survived school drama, first heartbreaks, and years of each other's secrets. She knew the weight of silence, and she never betrayed mine. When she arrived at my apartment, I didn't speak at first. I just laid the folder on the table between us and pushed it toward her. She flipped through the photographs, the receipts, the printed emails, her expression hardening with each page. When she reached the message from Amelia, "Soon it will be just us," she slammed the folder shut. "Clarice," she said, her voice low and fierce. "This isn't a mistake. This isn't misunderstanding. This is betrayal. From both of them." Tears stung my eyes, but I held them back. She told me I'd die alone. And he agreed. Together they made sure it would be true. Lydia reached across the table, gripping my hand tightly. "No. They don't get to write your ending. You will write theirs." Her words lit something in me. For weeks I had been collecting facts, but now I needed a plan. I explained what I envisioned. The wedding as the stage, the moment when Amelia would bask in the glow of being a bride, Marcus standing smug in the crowd. That was where the truth belonged. Where no one could deny it. Where the silence that fell would be unforgettable. Lydia's eyes narrowed, a strategist already at work. "If you want it to land, it must be undeniable. No emotion. Just truth. We give them the rope and they hang themselves." We spent hours sorting the evidence into a timeline. Cafe sightings, messages, receipts, recordings. Each piece slotted into place like stones in a wall. Lydia suggested I back up everything twice, on a hard drive and in the cloud, so nothing could disappear if Marcus grew suspicious. But friendship wasn't enough. I also needed protection, someone who could guard me against legal backlash. That was when Lydia connected me with her cousin Evelyn, a lawyer who specialized in family law. Evelyn listened patiently as I told her everything, then flipped through the folder in silence. When she finished, she closed it with a sharp snap. "You've built a strong case. If you release this wisely, he cannot call it defamation. It's his words, his actions. But you must be careful. He will fight dirty." I swallowed. I want them exposed. I want them stripped of their smugness. But I don't want to lose myself in the process. Evelyn leaned forward. "Then keep it lawful. Keep it clean. Revenge doesn't need to be illegal. It just needs to be undeniable." Her advice became my anchor. We began crafting the plan. Evelyn would safeguard the evidence, ensuring it couldn't vanish. Lydia would handle logistics, watching for opportunities to place the truth where it would have the most impact. And me, I would play my role, silent until the moment came, calm when the storm broke. Meanwhile, I tested Amelia. I answered her calls, feigned interest in her endless chatter about flowers, venues, guest lists. "You'll come, won't you?" she teased one evening. "It wouldn't be the same without my big sister." I smiled into the phone, my voice steady. "Of course. I wouldn't miss it." When the call ended, Lydia whispered from across the room. "She has no idea." In the weeks that followed, the three of us refined the plan. We rehearsed how the evidence would be revealed. Packets for key guests, copies for journalists, recordings prepared for playback. Evelyn coached me on what to say and what not to say. "Do not let anger take the wheel," she reminded me. "Let the facts do the work. Let them choke on their own cruelty." For the first time since Amelia had mocked me, since Marcus had shrugged at my pain, I felt strength curling in my chest instead of despair. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was preparing. And every time I looked at the folder, thicker now with new screenshots, new receipts, I whispered to myself, "You wanted me silent. You thought I'd die alone. But when I speak, it will be in front of everyone. And you'll never forget the sound." Because now I wasn't alone. I had allies, I had protection, and I had a plan. And soon Amelia's wedding would not be her triumph. It would be the stage where she and Marcus faced the ruin they had written for themselves. The closer Amelia's wedding drew, the sharper my resolve became. Every day that passed, every smug message she sent, every careless smile from Marcus as though he had already erased me, it all became fuel. My folder of evidence was thick. My allies were steady. Now it was time to turn proof into a weapon. We gathered in my apartment one evening, the three of us, me, Lydia, and Evelyn. The table between us was covered with papers, USB drives, printed photos, even a small portable speaker. Lydia poured coffee into mismatched mugs while Evelyn stacked the evidence in neat piles, her lawyer's mind sorting chaos into order. "This can't just be dramatic," Evelyn said, her voice cool. "It has to be strategic. One wrong move and they'll paint you as bitter. But if you're careful, no one will be able to deny what they see." Lydia leaned forward, her eyes bright. We make it simple. Direct. Like cutting glass. No anger. No speeches. Just the truth delivered at the perfect moment. We laid out the steps. Step 1: verification. Evelyn would hold the master copies of everything, signed, time-stamped, preserved legally. She had already asked a digital forensic expert to certify the authenticity of the emails and messages. That way, even if Marcus tried to accuse me of fabricating evidence, it wouldn't hold. Step 2: redundancy. Lydia insisted we back everything up 3 times. 1 copy in the cloud, 1 on a USB drive hidden at her apartment, and 1 printed packet sealed in an envelope. If one piece vanishes, the others live on, she said. No chance of them burying it. Step 3: timing. This was where I hesitated. When? I asked. During the vows? The reception? Evelyn shook her head. It must be precise. Too early, and she'll spin it as jealousy. Too late, and people will leave. The sweet spot is the moment of silence after the vows, just before the applause. The room will be breathless, waiting for celebration. That's when truth cuts deepest. The thought made my chest ache, but I nodded. Step 4: distribution. Lydia would hand discreet packets to selected guests. Close relatives, Victor's family, and 2 journalists invited to cover the wedding. Inside each packet, photographs, receipts, copies of emails. Not everything, just enough to paint the undeniable picture. Step 5: impact. The recordings would be played on the portable speaker. Adrian's voice at the cafe. Amelia's email promising a real beginning. Marcus whispering that, by the wedding, it'll be done. Their own words would damn them. And finally, step 6: composure. Evelyn was clear. You must not raise your voice. You must not cry. Stand calm. Stand still. Let their rage expose them. If you keep your dignity, the room will side with you. They will tear themselves apart. We rehearsed the scenario in my living room. Lydia played Amelia, lifting an imaginary bouquet, while Evelyn played Marcus, smirking. At the moment of silence, I practiced stepping forward, voice steady, announcing, "Before you applaud, you deserve the truth." Then Lydia pressed play on the speaker, and the room filled with Marcus's recorded betrayal. Even in rehearsal, my skin prickled. Evelyn tapped her pen against her pad. You see? The evidence does the speaking. You don't need anger. You just need silence afterward. Silence is heavier than any scream. I looked at the sapphire dress hanging on the door. The same one Amelia had mocked as too plain. I imagined wearing it to her wedding, stepping into the room she thought belonged to her, and letting the truth fall like a stone in water, rippling outward until nothing could stay hidden. For weeks we refined the plan. We checked every file twice, rehearsed every word, built backups for the backups. I learned how to keep my voice calm even when my blood boiled. Lydia taught me how to hold eye contact until the other person broke. Evelyn reminded me that the law was on my side. The night before the wedding, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the folder one last time. My hands trembled, but not from fear. From anticipation. They told me I'd die alone, I whispered. But tomorrow, they will be the ones left standing in silence. Because the plan was ready, the stage was set, and Amelia's wedding, her triumph, her moment, was about to become the very place where she and Marcus would be stripped bare before the world. The morning of Amelia's wedding arrived gray and heavy, as though the sky itself knew what was coming. I woke before dawn, staring at the framed evidence on my desk, the photo of Marcus and Amelia at the cafe, the printed email promising just us, the folded invitation addressed only to him. Today was the day. Today silence would fall. I slipped into the sapphire dress, smoothing the fabric over my body. Felt different now. No longer plain. No longer mocked. It was my armor. Lydia arrived early, her eyes scanning me from head to toe. You look perfect, she whispered. She won't see you coming. Evelyn followed with a small leather briefcase, her expression sharp, controlled. Everything is backed up. Everything is ready. We drove to the church together, my pulse steady, my hands clenched in my lap. Guests bustled inside, laughter echoing against stone walls. Amelia had chosen extravagance, white roses lining the aisle, a string quartet playing softly, chandeliers glowing even in daylight. It was her theater, her moment of triumph. And soon it would be her undoing. I took my seat near the front, Lydia behind me, Evelyn further back. I could feel their presence like anchors. Across the room I spotted Marcus. He was adjusting his tie, speaking quietly with Amelia's bridesmaids, his smile wide, his shoulders straight. His eyes flickered over the crowd, landing on me for a split second. His smirk widened. He still believed he was untouchable. The ceremony began. The music swelled as Amelia appeared in her gown, radiant, her veil trailing behind her like a river of light. She held Victor's hand, but her eyes flicked to Marcus more than once, her lips curving in a secret smile she thought no one noticed. Rage boiled in my chest, but I sat still, breathing evenly. The vows began and I braced myself. Lydia's hand brushed my shoulder lightly, our silent signal. The moment of silence after the vows would be ours. I touched the small speaker in my bag. It was ready. But then, something unexpected happened. Halfway through the ceremony, as the officiant spoke of love and fidelity, one of Amelia's bridesmaids leaned down to whisper to her. Amelia's smile faltered. She glanced toward the back of the church, her face tightening. Following her gaze, I saw him, Victor's younger brother, slipping out of the pew, phone in hand, his expression alarmed. My stomach twisted. Something was wrong. Moments later, Victor himself glanced down at his cuff, where his phone buzzed. He frowned, his jaw tightening as he read something. His eyes shot toward Amelia, cold, suspicious. A ripple moved through the room, confusion, murmurs shifting in seats. Evelyn leaned forward from her bench, her whisper reaching my ear. Clarice. Someone leaked. The evidence might already be in play. My heart pounded. Lydia's eyes met mine wide. If it wasn't us, then who? Then Marcus moved. He stood abruptly, striding toward Victor, his voice loud enough for the guests to hear. Victor, whatever you've seen, it's a lie. She loves you. She chose you. Don't let jealous people poison this day. The air in the church grew tense, electric. Victor's hand shook as he held his phone higher, reading aloud. Amelia, what is this? Soon it will be just us. At the wedding, everything begins. His voice cracked. Did you send this? Gasps filled the church. Amelia's face went white, then red. She stammered. It's not what it looks like. Marcus stepped in front of her, trying to shield her, his voice rising. Don't listen to this nonsense. This is manipulation. Someone forged it. Evelyn's hand brushed mine, her whisper sharp. If you wait too long, they'll spin it. But if you move now, they'll know the truth came from you. Clean and undeniable. I froze. This wasn't the timing we planned. The silence after the vows was supposed to be my moment. Now chaos was unraveling before me, threatening to swallow everything. If I didn't act, Marcus might twist the narrative, turn suspicion back on me. But if I stepped forward too soon, would the shock land the way I needed it to? I felt the weight of the speaker in my bag. Lydia's eyes burned into mine, urging me on. Evelyn gave the faintest nod. Because in that instant, with the ceremony collapsing around us, I had to choose. Hold to the plan and risk losing control, or strike now, revealing everything in the middle of their chaos, and let the truth shatter them before they could bury me again. The church was chaos. Victor's voice still echoed against the walls as he demanded answers. Amelia's face twisted in panic. Marcus tried to shield her with his arrogance, and the guests whispered furiously, turning their heads between bride, groom, and me. It wasn't the silence I had planned for. But sometimes revenge does not wait for silence. It creates it. I rose slowly from my pew, my sapphire dress catching the light. The sound of the wooden bench creaking drew eyes toward me. Lydia's hand brushed my arm as I passed, steadying me. Evelyn gave me a single nod, her briefcase on her lap, ready to release the files if I faltered. Victor, I said, my voice clear, cutting through the confusion. You deserve the truth. And so does everyone in this room. Amelia spun toward me, her veil trembling. Clarice, sit down. This isn't your place. I pulled the small speaker from my bag and pressed play. Marcus's voice filled the church, cold and careless. She doesn't suspect a thing. By the wedding, it'll be done. The whisper swelled into gasps. Victor's eyes widened, his face ashen. Press play again. Another clip. Amelia's words, written but now spoken aloud as Evelyn read from the certified email. Soon it will be just us. No more hiding. At the wedding, everything begins. The string quartet had gone silent. The officiant stood frozen, his Bible limp in his hands. The church itself seemed to hold its breath. I stepped closer to the altar, my folder clutched tightly. For weeks I've gathered proof. Photos, receipts, messages. My sister, the bride, and my husband, Marcus, have been betraying us both. Together. Mocking the people who trusted them most. I handed a sealed envelope to Victor. His hand shook as he opened it, flipping through photos of Amelia with Marcus at the cafe, receipts from hotel dinners, copies of emails that dripped with betrayal. His face drained of all color. "Victor, I am sorry," I said softly. "I didn't come to destroy you. But I will not let them destroy me in silence." Marcus broke then, his voice booming. "Lies. She's jealous, bitter. She forged this to ruin us." But Evelyn's voice cut clean across his roar. "Every message, every email has been certified by independent forensics. Every timestamp verified. These are not lies, Marcus. These are your own words. Your own actions." She held up the stamped affidavits, each page marked official. The guests gasped again. The weight of legality crushed Marcus's defiance. Amelia staggered forward, clutching Victor's sleeve. "It doesn't matter, Victor. I chose you." "She's twisting it." Victor pulled away sharply, his voice trembling with fury. "You wrote it, Amelia. In your own hand. At the wedding, everything begins." His eyes burned. "And it ends here." The church fell into stunned silence. For the first time since Amelia mocked me in our parents' kitchen, she had no laughter left. For the first time since Marcus told me I was difficult to love, his arrogance had cracked. I stood taller, my voice calm. "You thought I would die alone. You thought I was too weak, too plain, too quiet to fight back. But today, in front of everyone you wanted to impress, the truth speaks louder than both of you." Gasps gave way to murmurs, then to clapping, hesitant at first, then stronger. Guests turned their eyes away from Amelia and Marcus, their faces filled with disgust. Victor's mother shook her head in shame. Even my parents looked stricken, their eyes darting from Amelia's pale face to mine. Marcus lunged toward me, his fury unleashed, but two ushers intercepted him, forcing him back. His voice cracked as he shouted, "You'll regret this, Clarice. You'll regret exposing me." But I didn't flinch. I simply looked him in the eye and whispered, "No, Marcus. You'll regret underestimating me." Because though the church now held silence heavy as stone, the fallout had only begun. And as Amelia and Marcus's perfect facade shattered, I knew their lives, like their wedding day, would never recover. The silence after my words was thick enough to choke. Chandeliers still glittered overhead, roses still lined the aisle, but the atmosphere had changed completely. The grand church, meant to celebrate Amelia's happiness, had become a courtroom. And in that courtroom, she and Marcus stood guilty before everyone they had tried to impress. It started with whispers. Guests turned in their seats, muttering, eyes darting between Amelia, Marcus, and me. Then Victor's voice cut through, trembling but fierce. "How long?" he asked, his face pale as marble. "How long have you been lying to me?" Amelia reached for him, her veil trembling. "Victor, listen, it was nothing, just a mistake." "Nothing." His voice cracked. "I have the proof in my hands, Amelia. Your own words. Soon it will be just us. You promised him a beginning while standing here with me." Gasps rippled through the room again. Victor's mother pressed a hand to her chest, her face stricken. Victor's father stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the stone floor. "This wedding is finished," he growled. Marcus tried to recover. His arrogance rose like smoke. He stepped forward, addressing the crowd. "This is slander. Clarice has always envied Amelia. She's twisting things to ruin her sister's day." But Evelyn's voice rang out from the back, firm and steady. "Every file has been verified by digital forensics. Every document is time-stamped. These are not fabrications. They are your own words and actions, Mr. Cole. The evidence speaks for itself." She held up the signed affidavits, and several guests leaned forward to see. The murmurs grew louder. Some shook their heads, disgusted. Others whispered angrily, glaring at Amelia and Marcus as though betrayal were contagious. Lydia leaned close to me and whispered, "Look around. You've already won. The room isn't on their side anymore. Still, Amelia fought. She dropped to her knees before Victor, clutching his hands desperately. Please, Victor, you have to believe me. It didn't mean anything. I chose you. I planned a life with you. Victor pulled his hands free, his voice low but sharp as glass. No, Amelia. You chose deceit. You chose Marcus. And now you can live with the silence you created. Amelia's sobs filled the church, echoing against the walls that had once been meant to hold vows of love. Marcus crouched beside her, his face twisted with fury but not sorrow. He wasn't mourning a love lost, he was furious at being caught. His eyes burned into mine, full of venom. You think this makes you strong, Clarice? He spat. You think this will make them love you more than her? You're pathetic. You're nothing without me. The room erupted with murmurs again, this time angry ones. A guest shouted from the back. We heard your voice, Marcus. You said she didn't suspect a thing. Another voice added. And you told her she was difficult to love. Shameful. For the first time, Marcus faltered. His arrogance cracked under the weight of judgment. He looked around and saw no allies, no approving smiles, only disdain. My parents sat frozen in the front pew, my mother covering her mouth, my father's jaw tight. They didn't speak, but their silence was louder than words. For years they had enabled Amelia's cruelty, brushed off her jabs as teasing. But even they couldn't defend this. Victor's family stood and began filing out, their faces grim. This wedding is over, his mother declared. We will not watch our son bind himself to betrayal. Her words were final, absolute. Amelia crumpled at the altar, clutching her gown, her sobs ragged. Marcus tried to lift her, but she shoved him away in front of everyone, fury breaking through tears. This is your fault. You promised me, she screamed. The guests gasped again, her words confirming what the evidence had already revealed. Marcus's jaw clenched. Don't you dare put this on me. You chased me. The two of them, once smug and secretive, now turned on each other before a horrified audience. Their whispers of love became accusations. Their promises became daggers. The guests who had once come to celebrate now watched in shock as the perfect bride and the golden husband exposed their rot for all to see. I stood still, my sapphire dress gleaming in the fractured light. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. They were destroying themselves with every word. Lydia touched my hand softly, grounding me. Evelyn slipped out quietly to ensure the documents reached the journalists waiting nearby. By morning, the world would know what this room had already seen. As I turned to leave, Amelia's wail followed me down the aisle. Marcus's voice, hoarse and furious, shouted my name. But I didn't look back. The silence that fell behind me was no longer mine to carry. It was theirs. Because though the wedding had collapsed into ruin, I knew the true fallout was still coming. The next day, their reputations, their families, and their futures would lie in the ashes of the truth. And I was ready to watch them burn. The next morning, I woke not to silence, but to the vibration of my phone. Dozens of notifications glowed on the screen, flooding faster than I could read them. Headlines stretched across every feed, every outlet, every gossip blog. Bride exposed at the altar, affair with sister's husband revealed. Wedding ends in chaos. Groom walks out, bride left in tears. Family betrayal shakes high society circle. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the words. For months I had carried shame in silence, convinced I was powerless. Now the shame belonged to them. Lydia called first, her laughter sharp with disbelief. Clarice, you're everywhere. People are calling you brave. The video of the church is already online. Guests recorded Marcus shouting, Amelia sobbing. You should see the comments, no one is defending them. I pulled the blanket tighter around me, my heart thudding. And Victor? I whispered. He left last night, Lydia said gently. He walked out with his family. They issued a statement this morning. We will not dignify betrayal with silence. Amelia is finished in his world. Part of me wanted to feel pity, but then I remembered Amelia's smirk in our parents' kitchen, her voice cutting through laughter. You'll die alone. No, pity was not what I felt. What I felt was release. By noon, the gossip sites had published Amelia's email to Marcus. Screenshots of their texts circulated widely. Their intimate promises now public property. One headline read, sister's husband or sister's enemy. The double betrayal of Clarice. For once my name wasn't a punchline. It was the truth teller. Marcus tried to fight back. He posted a statement on social media. Lies and manipulation have been spread by someone with a personal vendetta. I stand by Amelia and wish for privacy. But the responses came like hammers. We heard your recordings, Marcus. That wasn't lies. Privacy? You didn't give your wife any. Both of you deserve each other and nothing else. Evelyn visited that afternoon, carrying fresh coffee and a file of updates. She smiled faintly as she placed it in front of me. Marcus's threats are empty. Legally, you're safe. The recordings and documents were verified before release. He can't touch you. And Amelia, well, she's finished socially. Victor's family won't let her name cross their threshold again. I exhaled, shoulders sinking with relief. For the first time in months, I wasn't holding my breath. But my parents, that wound was harder. My mother called late in the evening, her voice shaking. Clarice, why didn't you tell us sooner? I wanted to scream because you never listened. Because you laughed when she mocked me. Instead, I answered quietly, because I needed you to see it for yourself. There was silence, then a sob. My father came on the line, his voice heavy. We are ashamed. We let Amelia's cruelty slide for too long. We thought it was harmless. We were wrong. It was the first time I had ever heard my father admit such a thing. And though it didn't heal everything, it was enough. Meanwhile, Amelia disappeared. Her social media accounts went silent. Rumors spread that she had left town, too humiliated to show her face. Marcus, however, tried to claw back relevance, parading beside her in staged photos. But each time they posted, the public tore them apart. Their smiles looked hollow, their words desperate. For me, the day after, consequences were different. People I hadn't spoken to in years reached out. Old friends messaged support. Strangers wrote that my story gave them courage. One woman wrote, "Your strength reminded me I don't have to stay silent about my own betrayal." I cried when I read it. That night, I walked past the church where it all unfolded. The roses were wilted now, trampled by chaos, petals scattered on the steps. I bent down, picked up a single crushed bloom and held it in my hand. Once it had been perfect, beautiful, a symbol of Amelia's triumph. Now it was nothing but a reminder that even the brightest things can collapse. I let the petals fall and whispered into the empty street. You told me I'd die alone, Amelia. But it's you who stands alone now. Because though the world now knew their betrayal, my story wasn't just about exposing them. It was about finding the voice they tried to bury, and using it to ensure I would never be silenced again. The days that followed the wedding felt like waking into a new life. For months, my world had been heavy with secrets, lies, and humiliation. Now those burdens no longer belonged to me, they belonged to Amelia and Marcus. I walked through the city streets with my head higher than it had been in years. People who had once overlooked me now recognized me from the story. Some whispered, others smiled faintly. A few even approached to tell me I had given them courage. At first it startled me, but then I realized, betrayal isolates but truth connects. Amelia remained silent. Rumors swirled. Some said she had fled to another state. Others that she was hiding at our parents' home. I didn't chase the rumors. For once, her life no longer dictated mine. Marcus, however, continued his spiral. His social media posts grew more desperate. New cars, staged vacations, hollow smiles beside Amelia. But every comment shredded him. Still trying to pose? We remember what you said about her. His arrogance had been his weapon, and now it was his ruin. My parents struggled too. My mother called me often, her voice heavy with regret. We should have defended you, she admitted one evening. We let Amelia's cruelty shape our home. I listened quietly, my heart aching, but I didn't offer forgiveness easily. Forgiveness is not something given freely when wounds still bleed. But at least they finally saw me, not as the quiet, plain daughter, but as a woman who stood her ground. One evening, I sat alone in my apartment, the sapphire dress hanging in the corner. It had seen me through every stage. Humiliation, suspicion, revelation, triumph. I had thought about discarding it, erasing the memory of Amelia's mockery. Instead, I kept it, a reminder that what others call plain can become armor. What others dismiss can become power. I realized then that revenge is not always fire and fury. It doesn't always come in shouting matches or broken glass. Sometimes revenge is calm, deliberate, and patient. It is gathering every insult, every betrayal, and turning them into a weapon so sharp that it only needs to be unsheathed once. On the night of her wedding, Amelia expected applause. Marcus expected control. What they received instead was silence so thick it drowned them. Silence so absolute that no excuse could cut through it. That silence was mine. And to anyone listening now, I want you to remember this. When someone tells you that you are nothing, that you will be alone, that you are replaceable, do not believe them. Their words reveal more about their emptiness than about your worth. Let their cruelty be the foundation of your strength. Let their arrogance become the stage for their downfall. I was told I would die alone, but I lived to see them stripped of the very things they thought untouchable. I stood taller because they tried to push me down, and I found that silence, when wielded at the right moment, is the loudest form of revenge. This was my story. If you've ever been mocked, betrayed, or dismissed by those who should have loved you most, let my journey remind you. Patience is not weakness. Silence is not surrender. When your time comes, speak the truth and let it echo. Subscribe for more stories where betrayal is exposed, where arrogance collapses, and where revenge becomes the most powerful kind of justice.